Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Now, we didn't do a proper sound check, but I saw that when you guys spoke, the levels showed up on the thing on the screen, so we're looking good.
Okay.
Because that could have been embarrassing.
Right, sorry, I thought you meant I didn't check the levels, and the equipment exploded.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Despite the fact that I said literally before you hit record, are you sure?
Sound
do we
good?
sound all good? And you're like, yep, let's
And
go.
you sound great. Why do you ask? Okay.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
So we're a news and type.
News and type.
We're a news.
It's a news and type.
News and type podcast. A news and type things podcast. And it's been a busy week this week.
Yep.
It has been.
Everything decided to happen all at once.
It did. We had about 13 stories. Whereas last week we were like, how can we drag out these three seemingly disparate stories to an overarching narrative?
Yeah. And there was the producer off stage giving us the stretch sign to be like, you got to just really make an absolute meal out of the fact that Adam mispronounced something. Like, just go for it. Like,
go real hard.
We
spoke for an hour and 40 minutes, I think, for last week. It might have been. So I don't know how we've cut today down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 9 stories.
Yeah,
so
about 9. It would have been really convenient if they let Julian Assange out last week.
Yeah, that would have been handy.
If you could have just
really
done that
good.
a week earlier, if they could work to our schedule rather than their own, that would be great.
Or 14 years ago would have been the ideal timing, I think, for him. But
well,
too soon, Joe.
Yeah,
ideal for him, depending why he's in jail. Not the best guy. Anyway, I'm sure we'll get into it.
Should we talk about Julian Assange then?
We'll get to it. So, top story is Biden didn't do too good at the debate recently.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, where to start with this?
Biden not do so good.
Yeah. But Biden not do so good. What was it? Friday our time? It was Friday during the day. I was probably supposed to be doing some work, but instead was just watching the live blog. But it's all right. The general manager of my department was also commenting in Microsoft Teams about the debate, so I think I can get away with it.
If there's a Teams chat dedicated to the debate, already,
pretty much,
then you're fine. That's okay.
Yeah, pretty much. It was in our general chat. This is where you post just things that aren't work related. So the first debate for this campaign happened between the current president and the former president.
And the expectation. Let's talk about expectations. So the expectations for Trump were he needs to get out there and just not say crazy stuff. Just show that there's a human being with a soul at the center of that orange body. Show that you're a normal person, you're a compassionate person, you care about the people. Donald,
and you're not gonna overthrow the government.
You're not gonna overthrow the government. Number one.
I will not overthrow the government.
Say it, yeah. At the Silla, all together now. 1, 2, 3. I won't do a coup.
Yeah.
And I will obey the results of the election. And that was the expectation. Is just as long as Donald Trump doesn't throw his feces around the stage like a raging monkey, he will have achieved what he needed to achieve.
Yeah.
And for Joe Biden, the expectations similarly low. Just get out there, stand upright, show that you're in command of all your mental faculties, and just be a human being. Be your normal, caring, compassionate self. It's a no-lose scenario. Stand next to Trump and make him look like the asshole that he is, and we've got this locked up. It's in the bag. And Joe Biden did not do that.
No.
He fell short of expectations, shall we say.
It
was woeful.
Going in, I thought there was some announcements that he had a cold and things. They were like, oh, he's under the weather and all that sort of stuff, but... man,
this cold thing. If this guy's got a cold, we need to research this cold, because it's obviously it seems as though this cold has the same symptomology as a stroke, because
it just has the same symptoms of being in your early 80s and maybe tired and just allowed to stop working. You're allowed to retire.
Donald Trump had not even, I was watching it and I texted you guys, we're about 5 minutes in. Donald Trump hasn't said a word yet. They've with the Dana Bash and Jake Tapper have introduced themselves. They've talked about the rules for the debate. And that's all they've done. And then like Biden was like into his first response. We're 5 minutes in. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, this is really bad. He has lost this debate. And people are like, oh, yeah, he had a bit of a slow start. I was like, slow as in like prehistoric, like primordial ooze slow? Like, that wasn't a slow start. That was, we were watching an 80-year-old man like stroking out on stage. It was unreal. I had that same sinking pit in my stomach feeling when the results came in for the 2016 election. I was just like, oh, fuck, he's going to lose. Like that was the feeling. Anyway, so here's some of the debate lowlights from CNN.
President Trump, we're going to turn. Let's not act like children. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards.
But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it? Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare,
he gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true.
But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon.
Well, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give your minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star.
He was
Okay.
One thing I take umbrage with here, don't bring cats into this. Cats are fucking lovely. Cats are saints compared to you two dipsticks. Like, let's just not bring that anywhere. But also, my favorite little moment in that. Yeah, my favorite little moment in that is that when Biden is dropping his burn of being like, only one man's a convicted felon and it's this guy. If you look at Trump's face when he says it, he goes, yeah, he got me there. Like, he just does this expression of like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's true. I am. Like, which you just not expecting. There's another clip I've seen.
Bad. It was so bad. The whole thing, I was just sitting there, just feeling sick the whole time. And it just reminded me of that Bo Burnham song. Were they really going to make me vote for Joe Biden? How was the best case scenario, Joe Biden?
I mean, I'd say. Oh, my God. It's still the case. The best case scenario is Joe Biden in this turd and a douche sandwich or whatever it was.
A turd sandwich or a syringe sandwich. Those are the choices.
Yeah. But holy fuck! Like, let's go back to that long rambling. He beat
Medicare. And people are like, oh, he had a cold. I was like, bro, there's no cold in the world. This was like Weekend at Bernie's shit. Like, he was wandering off and like answering questions. He just like, we beat Medicare, just like nonsense. Like, look at the transcript. Like, there is no way that that any of this made sense. He is not in control of his faculties. Like, he needs to step down. Like, he's just sitting there with like resting 25th Amendment face, just slack-jawed, gazing off into the sun. Just like, he is not fit to be president of the dog club down the road anymore. You need to get rid of this man. Like, where is the party machinery? They're like, oh, the Democrats, the men in smoke-filled back rooms making decisions. I'm like, where are they? Get the smoke-filled back rooms back. We need some guys in smoke-filled back rooms to be pulling the strings and making some decisions right now, because democracy is on the line. And this guy is clearly not capable, not up to the job of running against Donald Trump. The guy, there was a bit where he just like kind of tapers off in that old man way that he does. And Trump, not that I like Trump, obviously, we don't like Trump on the show, but Trump was like, I don't know what he said there. And I think he doesn't even know what he said there. It's just like, what the fuck? What planet is this guy on?
Donald Trump's.
Oh my God.
Trump's one of like history's greatest monsters.
He's the worst.
He can be really fucking funny.
Yes, unfortunately.
Which is, and that's what he's best at in these. Like, I don't know what they pump Trump full of whenever he goes into debates, but I'd never describe
Have they got any spare?
Someone who is.
Have they got any left over?
I would never describe him as someone who is like quick-witted. But he always is in the debates. I don't know what they pump him full of, but he jumps on everything as a moment to like even the the "we finally beat Medicare" comment.
What?
CNN quotes Trump as then following up with, "He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
He beat
He's
it to death.
destroying it." I'm like,
He's beat it to death. He's
jump
destroying
right
it.
on
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's like, he's out of his mind, but he's lucid. That's the problem with Trump, is that he's a psycho and a liar, but he is like fully in control of his faculties. Whereas like Biden's
talk about
just
that.
weekend at Bernie the debate, just like they just dragged his lukewarm corpse up onto the stage and thrust him out there. It looked like he'd escaped from a nursing home. He was walking around, looking at the lights, going, "Where am I, Joe?" Like I was fully like, yes, they're circulating a bunch of like disinformation with these misleadingly edited clips of Biden stumbling on his words. And yes, he's got a speech impediment. And like, yes, he's got a cold, and like all these kind of like spin lines that they're giving to kind of talk. But I watched the whole hour and a half performance. And
you had a lot of gumption. I gave up after 10 minutes.
It
I was like,
filled me with absolute dread. Like, you're a hero. You did great stuff for your country. Not a big fan of your Gaza policy, but let's put that aside. You've done, you passed the IRA. You passed $35 insulin. You did great things for your country. You beat Trump in 2020. You did your work. It's time to have a bit of a sit. Like it's time now to let Kamala Harris or whoever's, going to be next in line. You need to let someone else take the reins here, because it was kind of like Nate Silver projected like a 65+% chance of Trump winning before the debate. Those are the numbers. The numbers afterwards, I can't even imagine what they're going to be, because that was horrendous. Like, and 48%, I saw some stats, 48% of viewers dropped out after the first 10 minutes. And that was when Biden was at his absolute worst during the debate. Like, it took him a good 45 minutes to warm up, and he had some good lines towards the end. Friend of the show, Polyverse, has written in, "Less morals than an alley cat" was an iconic line, though. Yes, Polyverse, but I would mention that was 45 minutes into a debate that everyone stopped watching at minute 15. So no one's going to see any of these lines, and you can't spin it. Everyone saw what they saw. You can't, the Democrats being like, "Oh, hit the sniffles." So it's like, the sniffles do not do, you can't like, who you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? Like, we all saw what we saw. And like the Pod Save America guys did an emergency podcast after this, and it was like
emergency podcast is a terrifying
concept. And there's so many emergency podcasts this week. All Podcastistan was in alignment. The titles of all, I showed you guys, I sent the list, the screenshot to you, where it was like, Biden must step down, the tricky Biden's catastrophic debate. Like, every title was just like, Biden did an absolutely terrible job. And the Pod Save America guys, who are like Democratic, former Obama administration guys, right? Like, they're very like, progressive kind of like Democrats, all behind Joe Biden. And then, so they're recording it right after the debate's aired, and the tone was just like, look, it was bad. Like, even they were just like, like, maybe we should talk about like having a brokered convention and like trying to replace him. Like, it was bad. We all acknowledge it was bad, but we got to like, pull our shit together and like go to bat for the Democrats, basically.
Well, it's worth noting that in the debate as well. So while Biden looked like a reanimated corpse, Trump
only barely reanimated, like a bad necromancer that really did not have his shit together.
If we're focused on Biden, he didn't do a good job. Trump, if we say his expectation was to, not look like a shady cunt, he did exactly the opposite and went ham.
Oh, he was the worst. He was also the only person in the world who did worse in that debate than Joe Biden was Donald Trump. Like, they were both terrible.
Like, I think it was like 24 said, like, maybe 16 was the number I read somewhere, different lies at various points of the.
Yeah, I saw something like 27 or something.
In terms of at least what they've been able to fact check, but like dozens, let's put it that way.
And they were just weird, like, where it was like, he talks about climate change, Joe Biden, we've got this climate change agenda and blah, blah, blah. And Trump goes, no, we had the best climate change numbers, with the cleanest air, the cleanest water, H2O. I was just like, why is it saying the chemical composition of water? Where is this? What is his brain? What is happening?
But, and that's why he's so popular, is he dumbs it right down to just names of
the best
elements.
H2O, and you got to hit a ball a long, long way, and I mean a long.
Oh my god, yeah! When they just started measuring their golf swing dicks.
Golf handicaps. I was
whatever.
gonna gouge my eyes out. I was feeling sick. I actually felt like physically ill watching them compare. And you see Biden like catch himself at a certain point. He's like, he said my golf, and he's like, oh, my golf handicap was an 8, not a 6. And then he kind of like shakes his head, like, why the fuck are we talking about this? Like, how did we get here?
I thought what he was arguing was that it was an 8 and he got it down to a 6.
Who cares?
He was, and I'm like, I don't know a lot about golf. I don't know. I don't know whether to be impressed by that. Fucking talk about something else. But no, the Trump thing that got me, because again, like I didn't watch the whole 90 minutes and all that. I was just getting like the live updates coming through on my second screen. And when one popped up that said Trump says he will end the Ukraine war by Jan 20, I went, fucking what?
Based on
like,
what?
Yeah, he was just like, yep, before I'm even inaugurated as president-elect, I'll end that war. And then the live bloggy thing noted, he has not given any semblance of a plan to achieve this.
Yeah, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, I was like, what? You just think you can like click you think the reason that war hasn't ended is because a different guy is the US president?
So the debate had no studio audience, and the debate was also one that Joe Biden's team like threw down, like it was their invitation. They challenged Trump.
I think they wanted it to happen.
So normally the Commission for Presidential Debates are the ones that organize it, and they've got different rules. I think the reason that they wanted to do it this way is so with the whole thing about, you've got 2 minutes to respond, the other person's mic is cut when the other person's talking, is because Trump has been notoriously like quite aggressive during debates in the past. But the thing is that it kind of serves the other candidate that he does that, because it makes him look like a fucking asshole. When the American people are treated to raw dog Trump doing as he wants to do, like they don't like it. Or at least the majority of Americans don't like it. It's bad for him. This debate and the formatting, whilst it constrained him, it kind of made him, at least for the first 45 minutes, hour, kind of made him look sort of reasonable, because he wasn't being an asshole. He was like waiting respectfully for the other person to talk. There was only one time when there was like some crosstalk. I think the idea was they wanted to protect Joe Biden from being buffeted and talked over and distracted. But because there was no audience in the room, it was just like him slack-jawed, staring off into space, the deathly quiet of the graveyard beckoning him. Like it was just bad. Like I think they tried to do it as like a strategic thing. Like, we're not going to play to Trump's strengths by structuring the debate this way. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I have no idea why Trump's campaign agreed to this, because it doesn't seem to be. Now it's like, wow, that was a terrible strategic error from the Biden campaign doing it this way. And
it is also just disappointing that the presidential debate needed a talking stick.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think they've seen what's happened in the past. Now, there will be, generally speaking, there's a number of debates that they have throughout the presidential campaign.
Slated for 2. I don't think we'll make it to that second one in September. I don't think that's happening.
I guess the key question now for Democrats is, I mean, Biden and Harris are the presumptive Democratic nominees. They are the Democratic convention, where that will be confirmed, is scheduled for July 15 to 18 in like, what's that, 2 weeks. I mean, is there a chance that they could be like,
fuck,
anyone else?
Yeah. What an episode of House of Cards this would have been. Oh man, the 2 weeks scrambling to pick a new candidate for the Democratic Party other than the incumbent president.
Could we put literally
anyone else?
Anyone?
So yeah, I'm not sure where you got that July number. So the convention, the Democratic conventions,
it's from Wikipedia.
August 19 to 22nd is the.
Oh wait, by tradition, because it is August. Sorry,
there we go.
It's the 2024 the Republican convention's July 15 to July 18. Yeah. Correct. So Democratic one's 19.
So they do have some time. I did hear some people like Galaxy Braining saying like, it's the reason that they allowed him to do this so early in the process, so he'd look bad and they could replace him. I was like, bro, after what I just watched, no Democrat wanted that. The Democrats were freaking the fuck out. In terms of like the guys on Pod Save America were like Democratic, like bigwig strategists, donors. They're all like flooding us with calls and text messages being like, what the fuck do we do? Like no one wanted this on the Democrat side. Polyverse is writing in, Biden is definitely not the face of the USA that you'd want, but the incumbent advantage is still real, though. He's already beaten Trump once before. Yes, but I'd say they're both incumbents to a certain degree because Trump's been president, Biden's been president. They already have their baked-in constituencies. Like I think
the known quantities.
They're known quantities, right? So I don't think anyone who is eligible to vote and has been eligible to vote the last time round is really going to change their view and how they proceed. Like you don't have that same kind of incumbency advantage where you've got a challenger coming from the outside who's kind of an unknown quantity. Like they're both incumbents. So I kind of feel like that cancels it out. And also like Biden is not leading in the polls currently, and he's bleeding support in key constituencies in the African-American community and the Latino community, which Trump is chipping away at. So like the whole idea that
which is just insane to me.
The levels,
I feel like
the levels are worse than they were in 2020 when he won, and he only won by like 40,000 votes in 3 states. You know what I mean? Like it was already an extremely tight race,
close.
And he's coming in like with way lower favorability ratings, worse economy, like he's trusted less on the economy. Which is like one of the key indicators, like who people trust on the economy is highly correlated to who wins an election. Like there's just a lot of things that are not stacking up for him in his favor right now. It's looking bad.
And also, as Adam pointed out to us earlier, it's probably more just an issue of voter turnout will just be tanked. Like it's not like Biden's performance will have made anyone go, well, I was going to vote for Biden, but I guess I'll vote for Trump. It's more
just his voters won't turn out.
Of everyone crying out for like maybe a third option, please. Will probably just not vote.
JFK with brainworms. Anyone? The brainworm guy.
For the people that do vote, I mean, it means that those random like there's always like 1 or 2 others that'll run for president, like the random independents. And they take normally, what is it, like a percentage
couple
point
of percentage
or something.
Points,
But it means that, like, is there a risk that all of a sudden one of them gets like 10%, which comes out of the Democratic vote as well? So
it seems like JFK Jr. seems to be more dangerous to the Republicans than the Democrats. I think both of them kind of see him as a threat, and that's another reason why they did this self-styled debate with CNN rather than going through the Presidential Commission on Debates, so they could deliberately exclude him from the process. Because I think he was polling at like double-digit numbers there for a second, and then he opened his mouth and like talked about brainworms, and everyone was like, "Oh, maybe not."
Can we vote for the brainworm?
The brainworm is honestly got a 13-point favorability rating over Trump at the moment. So
don't blame me. I voted for Kodos.
Yes. So it's bad. It's bad.
It's not great.
It's bad. It's making me anxious. And I don't see them like we could get a sort of Aaron Sorkin wet dream going here and be like, oh, they'll do a brokered convention and because 25th Amendment and they'll like none of that's going to happen. They're locked in. He's not stepping down. Like unless Jill Biden says like, honey, you can't do this anymore. And he says, what? And she said, you can't do this anymore. You need to step down. Like, unless something like that happens.
What are you talking about, Jack? No, I'm Jill. Jill, I'm your wife.
Jill, have been your wife for several decades.
I almost spat a mouthful of water all over my computer then, Tom. So thank you for that, Jack.
Oh, well, then maybe you'll install those fans I gave you.
Maybe.
That's a gag just for us. Anyway.
It's bad.
US, it's cooked.
Anyway,
speaking of cooked, if you were Julian Assange, you've spent the last over 10 years cooking away, trying to avoid getting extradited to the US.
14 years, in fact.
14? Yeah. 14 years. It's a long time. To the point where I reckon if there are any Zoomers who have been listening to the news over the last few weeks, you'd be like, Julian who?
Yeah.
Why do we care about this?
Yeah, who is this very pale man? And why do I care?
But of course, the big news is this week that Julian Assange has been released from detention. He's pleaded guilty to 1 count of espionage, I believe was the charge.
Yeah, it was basically the hacking sort of aspect rather than the publishing of military secrets. It was just the hacking aspect. The Espionage Act.
He is released with time served. So he's now a convicted felon in the US. He's banned from going to the US.
Great, he can run for president.
Not a citizen. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other things, unfortunately.
Anyway, but he's back in Australia
Yep.
now, which is nice. So yeah, how did we get here? I guess is the big question.
He's had a long sort of history, I guess. So the first little chunk of it was the actual big deal happened, as George said, like 14 years ago, where a member of like US intelligence, Chelsea Manning, snuck out some military secrets and handed them to to WikiLeaks. So yeah, the organization that just kind of publishes leaked documents out on their website, often just kind of in massive dumps rather than
which Julian Assange
which Julian Assange founded.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where it became like you published military secrets, and the US government was gunning for him for essentially helping someone blow the whistle on various different actions that the US had taken in the Iraq War and a whole bunch of things. We don't have time to get into the long list, but in order to protect himself, he sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, so as he was off soil that could just straight up extradite him to the US. And during that time, there was also allegations of committing a sex crime in somewhere in Europe. Sweden. Which Assange always said that's just a trap to get me out of the Ecuadorian embassy and into somewhere where they could extradite me to the US for turbo crimes.
But the Swedish sex crime was like for stealthing, as I understood it. It wasn't like that it was a non-consensual sex act. It's that he removed a condom during sex, and that part of it wasn't consensual. Like it was very...
Yeah. So
the whole thing was odd.
Those charges were eventually dropped. But then hilariously, the Ecuadorian embassy just ended up getting fed up with him. There were reports of him riding his skateboard through his residence, not cleaning up after his cat, and all these sorts of things of
bloody
being
millennials.
a shitty housemate,
yeah,
pretty much in the Ecuadorian embassy. So they allowed the UK police to drag him kicking and screaming out of that embassy, and they put him in like a turbo prison for 5 years. So he'd served 5 years in like Supermax in the UK until then. This sort of happened. And I guess a bit of the details of how we got to this point in terms of him being a free man. It seems that in the background, the Albanese government has been kind of campaigning for his release, but not very publicly. Like they haven't just been going around spruiking.
Weird, because I think a lot of people would be like, I think the majority opinion on the Julian Assange affair now would be, I think people would be supportive.
I've been seeing free Assange like banners and shit everywhere.
But I think it's a political winner for them now. So I don't know why they're talking when they're not talking.
Well, the reason why they didn't want to do it is because it would have pissed the US off. It's a key strategic ally. Why would you go and rub that in the face of the United States if you're trying to softly
but
tell
now
them
that
to
it's
calm
done,
the fuck down?
Now that
over the last week, they've been like it's been front page news for a week, but a week's all they're gonna get because it's.
But so it seems the big change was that when the governments changed over in 2022 to the Albanese government had sort of a priority to be bringing this up with Joe Biden and their US counterparts, lobbying hard, and they just sort of seemed to whittle them down to at least because not to get too in depth into it, because I guess I'm not fully across sort of all the legal aspects of it, but a large part of the case over this 14 years was whether or not, as the information that had been leaked related to US, like to US materials, and they whether or not that their leaking is covered by the First Amendment of the Constitution to the right to free speech, and whether or not Assange, therefore, as the quote unquote journalist publishing or reporting on this sort of stuff, could count as having that right to freedom of speech despite not being a US citizen. And so I don't know quite where they landed on that.
I think that it was more about that was the argument that like that's the trajectory that they thought it was going to go in. I don't think that like those arguments ever actually got made. They kind of just
no, and
copped
I
a
don't think it
plea
ever
deal
like
first, so.
I don't think a ruling was made on it.
No,
But
no.
yeah, sort of that's just like one of the arguments that they were proposing there, and yeah, it eventually just kind of the back room discussions. They weren't just discussions at the fire exit. Led to of the. Forget how many charges it was. I thought it was 17. Yeah, there were 17 charges of publishing official secrets, I think. But they whittled it down to just a single charge, sort of the actual. 17 publishing official secrets and one of hacking. Of hacking to get them. So they dropped the 17 publishing ones, and the deal was if he pleaded guilty to the one of hacking, then they would sentence him to like I think 62 months. But they were like, you've spent 5 years in this prison, time served, off your trot. Yeah.
So I mean,
that's a thing.
Like I think there was important stuff in what Julian Assange shared. The collateral murder video, shows essentially a war crime happening in Baghdad, murdering, I think it was 12 innocent people,
including 2 journalists, I think,
including some journalists. Yeah, so obviously there was important information that was in the public interest that was released. There was also just a bunch of like diplomatic cables and just like general information about stuff that didn't really have a public interest that was just dumped online. So I think, it certainly wasn't the kind of situation where it's like someone from the BBC gets a cache of documents and then they spend months going through it and it's vetted, and then they look through it and they tease out the stuff that's relevant to do a story on and then write a 5,000 word story. This was not that. Like, so I think
that's
the
always been the major
hyperventilation
criticism of WikiLeaks is that it's just
dumping stuff online.
People like that too. Yeah, you just kind of put it out there and it can like. Yeah, the stuff that's important is important, but then there's other stuff that can put like people's lives in danger.
Yeah, they call it
I think the US
sources and methods. Like basically, by dumping all of this stuff online, you're compromising how the intelligence apparatus like collects and like protecting the sources of this information, because people will look at this and go, oh, okay, well clearly the mole is like Jeff, and now Jeff's life is at risk because you dumped all this stuff online. That's not fair to Jeff, right? So.
And it also can be used for political purposes, like the whole WikiLeaks was sort of brought into the furore around the Clinton emails.
I was going to say, yes.
Because, depending on if you're just publishing whatever you're given at whatever given time, that can be manipulated. Now, the US did say, I think, that in the particular data dump that Assange was part of, there were multiple leaks as well, but the one with Chelsea Manning was the big one. That apparently some of that alleged, led to US personnel's and people getting killed. Basically, I don't know if that's true, but that's the allegation that was
plausible.
Made, from the US. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. They had an interview on SBS with his dad, and they were like, "Do you think Julian?" They asked him, Julian Assange's father, "Do you think?" What do you think Julian should do now? Should he go back to publishing, or what should he do? And then his dad was like, I think he should probably spend some time with his kids, go sit in a cafe, watch the world pass by, and just chill for a couple of months, basically.
I think he should just have a sit.
Maybe relax a little.
But it will be interesting to see whether... I mean, WikiLeaks is not the sort of global headline grabbing... apart from the fact that Julian Assange just got released. I haven't really had a heap since 2016, around their sort of investigative, or not investigative, but their consequential leaks coming from them that have the gravitas than what they previously did. It's a much more contested information environment now as well than it was in sort of the late noughties, early 2010s and earlier. We'll talk about it in a bit, but false information is much more rife. It's hard to tell what's real, and there are also there are different ways to get a hold of some of this confidential information than just WikiLeaks, which was kind of like one of the only organizations that was willing to sort of do this at the time. So yeah.
I found just the galling thing for me is just to be seeing all the all the Australian politicians who have sort of been talking about this, being like, it's about time, because like, you know, like he didn't deserve to be locked up like that, and you know, like freedom of speech, and like, well, he did, you know, he told us about war crimes and stuff that the US were doing, and like he needs to, like, that's good. It's been too bloody long, and it's good that he came home. It's all like Barnaby Joyce was one of the lead voices on this. I'm like, oh, okay. How do you feel about the guy who leaked that we did war crimes in Afghanistan?
Get him!
Like, or that the current government, I think, like, you know, they were being lobbied constantly to be like, hey, can you drop the charges on the guy who revealed war crimes in Afghanistan? They're like, nah, fuck him. If you're revealing our shit, fucking like slam their balls in a dictionary. If it's Julian Assange revealing like other countries' bullshit, no, national hero. Get fucked.
Yeah, it is a kind of crazy precedent, really, isn't it? Like a stark contrast. Yeah, and I to be clear, I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, he's been found guilty of that charge.
Yeah.
Did he get sentenced in the end?
I think so. I can double check.
I don't know. Can't remember. But yeah, effectively the same kind of information, just different ways of dealing with it, I guess. I think the thing with Assange is that it's been 14 years, and it's like, well, what more is there to gain from keeping him locked up and drawing out the process? There's not a whole for the US. There's not a whole lot more to gain. The guy's suffered quite a bit.
Well, no, here we are. David McBride, the guy who exposed allegations of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan, was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months in jail. So essentially a similar length of time that Julian Assange was considered time served in this UK prison. Yeah, Barnaby, what do you have to say about that? Prick. Anyway.
It's so funny,
kind of crazy watching Matt Canavan get on that
these people who
well.
have been so critical of Julian Assange over the years, like Peter Dutton said that the case had gone on too long, and like they're part of the Australian government's efforts to like help out and get Julian Assange home. It's like, yes, while the coalition didn't like actively get in the way, like at the time that Julian Assange was arrested, they said horrendous things about him, saying that he should face the legal process, get extradited to the United States, it's national security concerns, like all this sort of stuff, all the shit that they talked about him at the time. And now that it's like politically popular, Dutton's like, oh yeah, concerned for Julian Assange on an individual level. Like, it's just like me and Julian are just like close mates. It's like, that you're full of shit on this. Like, it's so crazy to me.
The flip-flopping of the coalition at the moment is honestly insane. But this is probably a good way to segue to our next story, which is to do with the UK election. And speaking of information and also misinformation, it's an article from the ABC, and they talk about the ABC, and I'm assuming when they say the ABC, they're talking about themselves, not the American Broadcasting Corporation. It's interesting because the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, has been monitoring a number of Facebook pages that are sort of been posting about the UK election and have been critical of it. And the ABC, the Australian organisation, has basically worked out that these 5 disparate sort of Facebook pages, which have, I think, a collection of about 190,000 followers or likes, or whatever you want to call it, across the 5 of them, are all highly likely to be Russian misinformation spam pages.
Propaganda, yeah.
Tom, you found this article. Are you able to describe how these pages work?
Well, sort of what the ABC had found was that there were a bunch of Facebook pages where they were all kind of spreading Russian talking points, just various. It's kind of hard to, bit weird to understand, but they were just seeing a lot of like talking points that were coming from like Russian government sources, or like they refer to them as Kremlin talking points, but also seeing things like a lot of AI generated images of like various like scare tactic kind of things.
For example,
fuckwits.
In this article, they show fake images of what appear to be Muslim men showing up on boats at the White Cliffs of Dover.
The White Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and it's just like so obviously fake.
Marches of Middle Eastern men just walking along in the English countryside.
And basically trying to stoke anti-immigration fears and, sort of xenophobia and Islamophobia, saying like, look at all the, the Muslims that are illegally coming into the country. There's wave after wave of them coming into the country. And it's like, if you spent more than 1 second looking at the image, you'd realize it's a fake AI image. Like, obviously, look at the fingers. Fingers are always a dead giveaway. But the people, they were sharing, these Facebook pages are sharing these images and getting thousands of likes. And basically, sort of putting the scare into people in the run up to the election to support the Reform Party run by Nigel Farage. And interestingly, I don't know to what level he's in cahoots with Russia, but like this, I think it was this week or last week, he came out with a position that was very anti the war in Ukraine, and it lost him a lot of support. In the UK. So it was really interesting. I was like, because that seems like kind of a little bit out of left pocket for him. Like you think of someone who's in Europe, they'd be a little bit more concerned about their territorial security and like European nations getting invaded by Russia. You think Britain would be like not so cool about that. So I think it surprised a lot of people that he came out with an anti, Ukraine position, and it bled him a lot of support in short order. So like does he know that he was supporting a Russian agitprop campaign, or was
Reform
he?
UK
like, is he
did not
in on
respond
it?
to ABC questions, George.
Yeah.
They did not respond to comments. So yeah, I guess the ABC, what they worked out was that obviously a lot of the images and a lot of the actual postings, the actual messages are the same, and were being
happening in synchrony on the same day,
at the same time.
The same message at the same day from all of these different and all of these different pages speak to like different political segments as well, which was the interesting part to me. Like one was like British patriots, like, far right, kind of things. And
so
then others
UK,
like,
the pages were called UK Patriots, British Patriots, Common Sense Britain, Brit Blend, and Beyond Borders UK. And some of them are
so last two are kind of like, more left-wing kind of focused in terms of what their content is that they post and the perspective that they post from. But if you look at them, and they've done this analysis, they're posting the same content across all of these different 5 pages with the aim of stirring up, anti-immigrant sentiment, lending support to reform over the Tories, and thus further destabilizing the political landscape in the UK, right?
I find that weird in that, like, the way that they saw that these were quite coordinated was, the same photos with the same captions and all that being posted to all these on the same
day. IP addresses and like paid messages coming from the same IP location.
But my point being that if you're on a page that's like turbo right-wing, white supremacy, British patriots, whatever community, or you're in the pro-refugee left-leaning one, and you're posting the same content, one of those pages is going to be like, the people following it being like, why is my pro-refugee, leftist ideology posting the throngs of Muslim men approaching the White Cliffs of Dover? What are you talking about?
Because it's all about hate. Like the more hate you can generate, whether it's far right hate or, triggering the left, you know what I mean? Either way, you're getting engagement on the post. You're getting lots of people talking, and the algorithm then pushes it and boosts it.
The engagement on the post, sure. I just would imagine all the people who, I don't know, maybe I'm giving too much credit. If I liked a leftist page and then they were all like, but Hitler was pretty rad though, I'd be like,
but that's the insidious thing is they kind of mix it through. And so it becomes less about like left or right and more about anti-institutionalism. Right. And so the lefties are coming at it from the like big institutions are bad and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the conservatives are coming at it from like, stop the boats, conservative perspective. So it's the same piece of content, but like either side is reading it in the way that they want to come at it from. And both and the end result for both of them is like politicians are all corrupt. The system isn't working, anti-institutionalist kind of vibe, right? And the result is chaos.
Example. So like one of the pictures is, a truck which says full of politicians' promises on the back.
It's a sewage truck,
and then
presumably.
and then it says, another 500 million to Ukraine. And so, while perhaps on the left page you might not be getting the boats coming across the channel. There are, everyone can agree that,
but the content is so the British
leadership.
Patriots one is stop the boats, and then another 500 million pounds to Ukraine. The other one, Common Sense Britain, says stop the boats X, and then another 500 million pounds to Ukraine tick. So it's like with a small adjustment. So it's like, are they being critical?
Does change the message. Yeah.
Are they being critical of the 500 million pounds to Ukraine? Are they saying that's a good thing? Or it's one of those things that's kind of confusing. You can sort of read it the other way, but both of them are saying politicians are full of shit. And that's a message that most people can agree with, right? And that's what, that makes them critical of institutions, and thus who you're going to vote for. You're going to vote for the bomb throwers coming from outside from Reform. Right, who are really just, yes, they're all far right.
It's the vote. It's like what we talked about in the US, where all of a sudden what did you say? Earworms guy is the brainworms guy.
JFK.
Is all of a sudden,
JFK Jr. Not the actual JFK come back to life. Although depending on who you ask in the UK, they might think that. Polyverse also says Facebook also just throws you content that you don't even follow. So it's about putting out something that stirs up some interaction, good or bad. Yeah, that's what we were saying about engagement. You get the engagement, you get the blood pumping, you get people angry and yelling at each other in the comments, and the algorithm rewards that and pushes it out more to people saying, oh, this post is getting a lot of heat. Yeah. So even if you don't follow the page, you're still getting organic reach based off the hate attention that this thing is getting. So,
and that was the same. We saw the same thing in the Indigenous Voice to Parliament referendum here in Australia. There were the same tactics were being used, whether or not they were, foreign. Yeah, whether.
Well, we know that Advance gets like funding from some libertarian think tank and stuff. Like none of that's a secret. So it's the same forces at play.
It's the same, tactics. Now, what the ABC also realised, and this is how they were able to join the dots together, was because a lot of them were paid ads. They were able to work out, well, it came from Nigeria and they were paid, the ads were paid for in Nigerian currency. And then obviously, in terms of the history of this whole interchange is that, well, Facebook's previously worked out that there are, what's the term they use? Like basically troll farms set up in some parts of Africa, which are putting these posts out.
And Africa's known as like a Russian, like a proxy for these Russian disinformation efforts as they come out of Nigeria. They come out of like plausibly deniable third parties in Africa. Like that's a known thing.
This is why France is currently having kind of a proxy war with Russia in like Mali and some of these African countries, is because Russian influence in a lot of these sort of, the coup belt as it is across some parts of Africa at the moment. The reason why Russian influence is so strong there is because they can then get in and they can manipulate local regions, populaces, whatever else, and set up these kind of these facilities that put these posts out, and then then they have plausible deniability. So the ABC's referred this information to the UK. I think they're going to have a look at it. But I guess this is what's concerning is obviously we've got the US election coming up. Facebook Meta has said that they are, going to be trying to crack down on all these, this kind of stuff happening, because it's known quantity. It's happened before, and it's obviously just another example of it happening again. But like, it goes to show that they're not cracking down on it because they can't possibly cover
all that ground.
No, like it's like it's a spider web that grows exponentially, and they've got you can have AI, start to sort through and automatically blog posts and go, but like that's just scratching the surface. And the other problem is it's going to be
you're just playing whack-a-mole. The AIs that are pumping it in the first place are going to be working just as hard to pour more shit out there in the first. And the problem is like, what's that phrase? A lie circles the world 6 times before the truth even gets its pants on. Like that is shown to be true. There are people that have measured this in social media dynamics where it's like outrageous lies circulate faster and wider than truths and corrections. Like it's measurable, the effect that this has on the information environment beyond just like whether you can get some AI to slap it down. It's like, well, it's too late. Like 3 million people have already seen it by the time it gets flagged and taken down. So even if you take it down, it's too late. Like the damage is done.
Well, I mean, the UK election's in 5 days, so we'll see what it does.
It's going to be
But
bad.
don't you worry. Their eyes on the ball, Tom, because they're not looking at what the ABC has just posted. They're instead meeting with J.K. Rowling to discuss her concerns about gender.
Right. So they're not talking to her about why the last 3 movies that she's written have been absolute dog shit, and she has 2 more planned.
Oh, good.
No, they're not meeting about that, because I feel that's more important to Britain's like national security and well-being than any issues to do with people's genders.
This is the buggering of Grindelwald series. What's that all? What's that?
Fantastic Beasts. Let's get a movie that's named after a textbook that was featured in the first Harry Potter novel and make it about the rise of like wizard Nazis. I don't know. I only saw the first one.
Political.
It was meh. Anyway, J.K. Rowling sucks. Let's talk about it.
He sucks. Okay, so J.K. Rowling, she's known to be, I guess, anti-trans. Is that kind of what I'm?
Yes.
I'm not as familiar with this.
That's putting it mildly.
Vociferously anti-trans. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Labor in the UK have announced a bunch of measures, like policy positions, basically, where they would, from what I understand, they would ease restrictions around people wanting to get gender reassignment surgery. Is that correct?
It's not around the surgery. It's more about getting recognition from the government as to your new status. So currently the status in the UK is that you need to go through a panel, like part of it's doctors and lawyers. There's like a 2-year waiting period, and then you get the gender recognition certificate, so GRC.
Okay.
So basically what they're saying is we're going to reform that process. We're going to have a 2-year reflection period, but the status is determined to be changed by a medical specialist. So just between you and your doctor. And there's other things that they're kind of like easing up to make it easier for people who are wanting to transition to do that. Now, these seem like changes, things like, banning conversion therapy and things like that. They all seem like completely reasonable changes to me. Like they're not saying like you can just put up your hand and say you're a different gender so you can compete in the Olympics, which some people seem to be very concerned about happening, although I don't see that being a particularly large problem given everything else that's happening in the world. But if you were concerned about that for some reason, don't be. It's not an issue.
They are concerned. J.K. Rowling's asked that the government, Labor, meet with a number of groups that she's outlined as part of the consultation process.
Now, aside from J.K. Rowling having formerly been, is what I'm trying to say, a large Labor donor, aside from that, why do we give a fuck what some children's author thinks? And why is the Labor Party falling over themselves to like host her like she's the queen or something? Be like, no, we'll have a meeting. We can convince you. Don't worry, JK. We'll tell you about how our gender policy is all good. Like, please don't stress, JK. Like, please, JK, please love us back. We love you so much, JK.
I know I'm in my sweet, lovely bubble, but like all I know about J.K. Rowling and the stance on gender is that she's awful and terrible and no one should listen to her on it. But unless she has like the mass influence that they're afraid of to be like, well, if we can get J.K. Rowling to sign off on our reforms in this regard, then because otherwise if she thinks they're not going far enough and she says, fuck the incoming Labour Party, I say incoming because the Tories are going to eat shit on Thursday, hopefully. But that if she says that the Labor government's terrible, that it would actually hurt them. But I don't know. It's sort of like maybe instead of talking to the person who hates anyone who is not on the binary, quote unquote, traditional genders in her eyes, rather than listening to her, you should talk to like advocates and organizations and charities that have dealt with supporting people who are trans, non-binary, fluid, etc.
I just don't understand why. Like, you're going to win the selection handily, right? Like, it's projected to be a wipeout. No. Like, the Conservatives are going to go from a historic majority in the last election cycle to a historic loss. The Scottish National Party has thoroughly shit the bed in the last 5 years. Like, everything seems like it's coming up Labour. So I don't understand why they're bending over backwards to make this woman happy. Like, who cares if she used to be a large Labor donor? You're going to fucking win. Like, why compromise yourself with your constituents over the opinion of one fucking person who holds no public office.
Well,
like, other than the
yeah,
fact that she's like a really famous children's author. Like, why the fuck do we care about what J.K. Rowling thinks? Like, why are we trying to appease this person? She's no one. Like,
I think she's a metaphor for the larger community. So basically, in some conservative circles, my understanding is that the gender issue, quote unquote, is, evidence of like wokeism and government conspiracy, and it sort of is another thing that sort of ends up going into the the leftists have gone crazy kind of.
Yeah, but are those voters? Are any of those voters voting Labor anyway? Like, I'm just like, who is this for? Like,
I do think there's probably, I'd imagine, like there'll be people that might be like, say, economically left, or so, from a like economics point of view, but like they might have ideologies that are,
but they're also bigots
or conservatives. Well, yeah, but I guess the point being is
you can't forget the bigot vote.
My point is, if you let this, if you don't act, shall we say, if you don't sort of put appeasement out and sort of try and just sort of pat around the issue and sort of quieten it down a bit, if you make this a cudgel to which bigots, conservatives, and that ecosphere can use in the next 5 days,
they've been pursuing this agenda anyway.
It's just creating an extra. It's just creating an extra.
I don't know. It is weird to me.
Echo chamber.
It is weird
to me.
Lead
up to an election, which when you want to have clear airtime to spruik your message, not have to deal with, look, Labor's, and having to answer these questions, which probably are a distraction, you would think, to the larger.
It just seems weird to me that Labor is going out of their way to bend over backwards and like invite this like essentially private citizen to like have discussions with the party. It seems very strange to me. Like,
and for an idea of the kind of private citizen we're talking about, I mean, also this same week at the British LGBT Awards, David Tennant, during his appearance, told like, for example, a minister referred to a minister who's been advocating for banning trans women from entering like women's toilets and sports teams, telling them to shut up. But also said that he just, in an interview, he said that transgender critics were, quote, a tiny bunch of little whinging fuckers who are on the wrong side of history and they'll all go away soon. In response to that, J.K. Rowling referred to him, referred to people like Tennant as the gender Taliban.
Oh, shut up. Shut up, JK. Just go away. Just go off, buy a private island somewhere and just fuck off. Yeah. Just go away.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, Weed Freak, is writing in, David Tennant is a national treasure and J.K. Rowling is a national disgrace. Yes, I'm
couldn't agree more. David Tennant is a god among men.
I'm inclined to agree with Weed Freak.
Yeah.
So
David Tennant rules.
So on the subject of inhalants, shall we say?
Interesting segue.
There we go. I made it. So the Australia back overseas here in Australia, the government has watered down a vaping ban to win support of the Greens. So Mark Butler, I think it was last year, announced that they were going to do a ban on vapes, particularly disposable vapes. There's been a lot of issues with underage kids buying and using these vapes like at school and things like that, essentially addicting a younger generation of kids to multi-flavored bubblegum vapes and creating quite a serious...
Blueberry's where it's at, apparently.
Just a little blueberry pudding explosion in your mouth.
What you've been told by who, Adam?
By the kids.
Yeah. The kids, yeah.
By the kids.
It's like the kids. They all used to work. I used to love it.
Pretty in touch with the kids and the youth, Adam. So on the TikToks. So the idea was we're going to ban vapes except for people who are using them as a smoking cessation device, and those people would need to acquire a prescription from a GP in order to procure those vapes. And it was only going to be for those vapes that are like refillable ones.
Yeah, because the single-use ones are
they're terrible
for the environment.
Terrible for the environment. Yeah,
a big part for for kids using them as well, like, with the not having as much disposable income and all that sort of stuff, they were like smoking them within an inch of their lives. And so being like, no, I can still get more out of it, to the point when you're vaping the battery acid in the fucking like lithium battery or whatever that's in it.
Yeah.
Like, it's real bad. Four Corners did a great thing on like vaping in schools.
Yeah, it's bad.
And stuff that like,
It's not good. But believe it or not,
not great.
Breathing in battery acid, not so good for you.
Not so great.
Now, obviously, compared
to
what are the current what?
Well, what is the current proposal that's actually going to get support? Like,
so basically now what's happened is the Greens have said, nah, Vape Nation is our core constituency. That you are absolutely not going to pass that with our support.
They didn't say that verbatim, but
that's not a quote.
We're reading between the lines.
That's on background. So essentially what they said is, they're not down with prohibition, and people should be able to smoke whatever they want, I guess. And then,
it's an interesting one in the
I get it from
alcohol being a big problem and stuff like that as well. Like that, you restrict it to adults, but that still doesn't fix the issue. And like the prohibition has sort of been shown to not like work per se. But at the same time, it can affect the people around you. Like, like cigarettes, I feel like cigarettes and vapes and all that sort of stuff are a bit different to alcohol and other things because like I'm drinking a beer right now. Me drinking beer does not make the person next to me have the effects of beer.
Not the effects of beer, but the way that social circles work is that if peers of yours are drinking, are smoking, you are much more likely to pick up those habits. So I think the idea from the government is like
smoke, secondhand vape and all that sort of stuff. Like even if like they're not a peer of mine, I'm just at the same bus stop.
I get what you're saying.
Like that's where
however,
that's why you've got to be a bit more stringent on some of these things.
The thing is like to me, the consumption, like my political view generally is like, well, when it comes to drugs, I have a more libertarian mindset where it's like, if you can get things and test them and make sure that they're pure and make sure that they're not getting any adulterated, fentanyl and bullshit in there. Like my impulse is to say, legalize it, make sure it's monitored and safe. But
there we go.
With tobacco
pure natural opium. Well, George is on board. Heroin, let's go.
I'm not saying legalize everything, but I think for the majority of certainly with weed, certainly with I think, various, stimulants and things like that, I'd probably be fine with legalization or at least decriminalization. The thing with tobacco though, if you would argue, if you're going to ban vapes, then why not tobacco? And my thought is like, we should ban tobacco as well. Like it is an unalloyed bad thing for society that tobacco exists and kills people. Like one puff of a cigarette is bad for you. 2 puffs is worse. 3 puffs is even worse. Like there's no good to society as a result of smoking being allowed and legal. And the thing is, vapes are a product. It's not like tobacco where it's like loose tobacco and you can sort of like smuggle it in and then roll your own cigarettes and like all there's loosies or there's other kinds of things where prohibition might like you'd say prohibition with alcohol or prohibition doesn't work because people go and get alcohol other ways. It's kind of different with vapes because a vape is a product. It's built in a factory. It's got a battery, comes in a foil wrapper.
It's an assembled product.
It's an assembled product. Like it's not a thing that you can just like get some vape juice and just like, kind of like
it's my own organic vape juice that I farmed.
Do some vape juice in the backyard out of an apple core. Like that's not really how it works. And to the extent that like kids are very much getting a hold of, like it's already for 18 plus. That was already part of the rules. And yet kids are getting these things in astounding amounts and getting addicted to them. It's like everyone at high school is on a vape to some degree, like, and it's not as bad as smoking, but it's also like very bad for you still, like people getting this popcorn lung thing and all this sort of like negative health effects of, breathing in battery. Like you're not supposed to breathe in anything that is not air into your lungs. It is bad for you.
I don't know. I don't know if I like, completely agree on like just maybe we should be completely banning tobacco and all that sort of stuff as well. Cause I think like the really bad thing about cigarettes is often all the other shit that's sort of in it, right? Like, people who are having like nicely rolled cigars and things, yes, can have those health impacts.
But tobacco's still bad for you.
Tobacco's still bad for you. Alcohol's still bad for me. Yeah. All that sort of stuff. So it's where there's that, no, like, okay, you're like, we know people who are like cigar connoisseurs and things like that. Like, no, I don't want to take that away from you. Like have a nice Like you can have a nice smoke and enjoy that pastime. You're aware of the health risks. There's health risks in everything. But like being out and about in public spaces and all in like other people's shit who haven't consented to smoking all this sort of stuff's a bit different.
If we were starting from the ground up though, if someone introduced smoking cigarettes or cigars or whatever today with our current health standards, with our current understanding of what it can do to the human body and the negatives and the cancers and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It wouldn't get by like the TGA and all this, you know what I mean? Like if someone introduced motorbikes today, we wouldn't go, actually, that's pretty unsafe. You're not allowed to do that. It needs to be encapsulated. You need airbags. We wouldn't allow this if it was a new thing that was just coming to market now. And so I think that's where the argument against vapes comes in, because it's like, okay, well, tobacco is kind of like it's been grandfathered in. It's a pre-existing negative thing. There's also like, as people are saying in the comments, it's too much of a cash crop for the government to actually ban it. Like there's obviously government revenue and like there's entrenched interests keeping it live, right? But vaping is a new thing. So it's like, rather than letting this explode and become an entrenched thing, maybe it is the duty of government to kind of stop it before it really starts.
Wait, hang on. Sorry.
But this proposal now is basically saying you can get the vapes without a prescription, but you have to get them from a pharmacy. And that seems crazy to me, because the pharmacy peak body has been like, we don't want this. Like where we sell medicine, like we're not into the idea of like basically becoming nicotine purveyors.
Yeah, but like, you know, you go down to the pharmacy, you get your baby formula, you get your lozenges, you know, and then you just get your vapes as well. It's all in the one.
Seems a bit bizarre to me. Yeah. Like, come and get your medical Coca-Cola, kids. It's full of cocaine down at the pharmacy. Like, it just seems like a weird thing to me.
But that was the key thing I wanted to say. Yeah, we've sort of been talking about it without actually talking about what legislation was. But yeah, so only pharmacies will be able to sell it, which is weird because, like, if you go down, say, Swanston Street in the Melbourne CBD, or any street in any major city, just like vape shop,
thing, right? Yeah.
So this is apparently the requirement will have a prescription. The requirement to have a prescription will be down-scheduled from October. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a mistake.
Can sell them. You still have to be over 18.
Plain packaging, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but those like vape shops, tobacconists selling them wouldn't be a thing anymore. And I saw an interesting article from like the ABC spoke to like some people who run vape shops, and I thought some of their arguments were a little interesting. Because like one, it is sort of the thing of they made the point that you can put to a lot of industries, like for alcohol, for cigarettes, for sex work and things like that like trying to restrict it too much pushes it underground, makes it more dangerous. Like people who are importing like dodgy vapes have probably already got them by the thousands ready to sell to people, etc. But another thing they pointed out was they were like, and really what you're going to do is just make those pharmacies a target for crime. We get hit by crime all the time. My shop got ram raided for vapes. And I was like, what? So you want to still be a business that's ram raided by crime?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Like you want to like, no, like I don't want the pharmacy to get raided for crime. I'd rather my business got raided for crime. I want to spare them from crime so I can get hit by crime. It seems
Doesn't
like
it show how like weirdly addictive these products are if people are willing to do ram raids in order to steal the stuff? I am generally of the mindset of like maximizing people's personal freedoms. But with this, I'm kind of like, I've seen, if it was just people who are 18 plus getting their hands on this stuff, maybe you go, well, you're an adult, you can make your own decisions, even though your brain isn't fully done cooking till you're 25. Like I am generally of that libertarian kind of disposition, but with vapes, it's like we're hijacking kids' brains who are in their 15, 16-year-olds before they even know, just because it's cool, everyone around them is doing it. Like we're creating another generation of nicotine addicts. Like there was a good kind of like 8 to 10 year period when we were sort of exiting high school in uni where it was like uncool for the first time in history to be addicted to nicotine in some fashion. And we've just like, it was like a brief hiatus and now we've just brought it back. And it's like, that seems
it's now because
not good.
Doesn't smell terrible. I reckon's a big part of it.
Blueberry.
That's not me saying I love the smell of vapes. Usually I get hit by like someone's vape excess and I'm just like, whoa, that's a weird candy sort of smell. But yeah, it's like you no longer smell like a fucking chimney. You smell like fancy, like, and that was a part of like, I know some friends of mine are teachers, And they've talked about like, that it's kind of hard to spot, like if a student's been smoking like cigarettes, you're like, woo, yeah, you smell like a chimney, like, oi, like, I know what you've been doing, we'll have a chat, all that sort of stuff. But like vapes, is it a vape or is it just a perfume? Like,
well,
that
you can smoke in the
aroma you get off
bathroom,
them.
and yeah, you don't stink. You don't walk out and people go, "Well, you're just smoking in there." Like,
is it just whatever kind of shit some pop stars pimping at Chemist Warehouse, or is it a vape?
I say this as someone who used to vape. Like, it was not a good habit. Like, I got into it because like we were in London, we were traveling with work friends, and like people were vaping, and it was fun. And then I kind of developed a habit, and I got stuck on it for about a year, and it wasn't a good situation. Like, those vapes are good, $20-$30 a piece. You're doing 1 or 2 a week. Like, it's not good for you. Like, I didn't feel good doing it. I didn't like, the effect that craving something, that being addicted to something was having on me. Like, it's not a good place to be in. And I'm a 33-year-old adult. Like, I just hate to imagine what someone in their teens who really is not fully developed can be a but like Weed Freak is saying in the comments, same thing with Macca's.
Another sentence I thought I'd never say. Weed Freak makes a good point. It's the same thing with McDonald's and things like that.
Everything will kill you if you don't do it in moderation, guys.
Sure.
Like, everything is bad.
And
100%. But marketing it to children is sort of the extra part, right? Like, we can talk about whether or not
bubblegum rainbow,
like adult
unicorn
doing.
Bubblegum unicorn cum shot as a flavor.
Adults who know what they're doing to vape. We can talk about that till the cows come home. But all these companies like Juul and whatever that are
targeting children.
Marketing to children is different. Like,
and it's really. When it comes to weed, I have, like I said before, I kind of had the opposite perspective. It's like, well, I think legalizing it, taxing it, I think that is the right way to go for some of these drugs where, we've created a criminal underclass unnecessarily. And like, the revenue from, like, you look at states in the US that are taxing and legalizing it, it's had like amazing effects in some states for the revenue of their balance sheets and things like that. So I'm like, I am torn, but I also don't like that the Liberals are teaming up with the coalition on anything. Like, that doesn't make me feel good.
I mean, the Greens are teaming up with the coalition.
What did I say?
You said the Liberals are teaming up with the coalition.
The Greens.
It's probably a good way to segue to our next article.
Anyway, we need to blow through these.
So there's been a bunch of other team ups, shall we say, in the Senate.
Everyone loves a team up.
Where Labor don't have the majority. So the Greens have teamed up with the coalition to block a Labor housing policy. What was this policy? This policy was it was packaged in actually with a couple of other things. So they were also trying to package in, I think, I've forgotten what it was already. It's a few other measures.
There was
the chief one,
not pay as you go providers, buy now, pay later.
Buy now, pay later scheme. So there was some legislation around that. And they tried to package this housing thing in with it.
Yeah, with very different pieces of legislation. Yeah.
So what this piece of legislation was basically build to rent. Is the term. What that means is there is a developer or some sort of corporation that comes in, builds typically a large high-rise apartment building, owns, rather than selling those individual units off as their own title, then just basically holds those apartments within the corporation for rent, and then the concept is that then increases housing supply with very little sort of
investment from the government. So the idea is they're going to give some sort of like tax discount if developers are building build to rent complexes. Now, this is a thing that's
how it happens overseas.
Yeah, this is pretty popular in the United States. When I was living in Seattle for a little while, like I was in a build to rent property. It's run by like a corporation rather than individual landlords, which is kind of how things are done here. It was fine. I don't really see it being a solution to the affordable housing crisis. Like, it does add more supply in that there are more units for people to rent. And if there's more supply, then presumably that will help meet the demand, and maybe prices won't be as high if there's more stock in the system.
Well, for rent, but not for housing prices.
No, it doesn't really do anything like that.
You're not actually increasing the number of titles available for purchase.
So all those houses that are being rented and those rents are going up because the mortgages are going up because interest rates are going up won't change that. So all those people will still have astronomical rents. But
I guess if people
more landlords,
if people have more options for places they can live affordably, maybe that takes some pressure out of the market. But it's what they were saying is like 10% of these build to rent apartments would need to be made like affordable, like rent capped, in order to service low. But if you're building 150,000 units and only 10% of them are like affordable units, and affordable in Sydney means something completely different to like affordable elsewhere. It's still pretty expensive, right? So I don't really know that it would do all that much to create.
But do the Greens and the Liberals need to block it? Like it's not like we're going to drastically change housing in Australia. It's one part of a multi-tranched housing sort of platform that Labor are trying to build upon. And again, because
is it better than nothing? Yeah, it's probably better than nothing. But it does seem frustrating to me that because there have been a couple instances like this where the Greens have blocked policy that Labor has wanted to put forward on housing to try and ameliorate the crisis. And yes, it's like classic neoliberal, like centrist Labor guys kind of like tinkering at the edges, but like I'd rather tinkering at the edges than nothing, which is what's currently happening.
So I guess, I don't know, the Greens are trying to do their thing of sticking to their principles, being like, no, this is the action that we want to see happen, so we're going to keep pushing for that.
Well, both
compromises.
You could do this. It doesn't really cost the Australian government anything. It's like, okay, we give a tax concession to some developer, but it's like if that developer wouldn't have built that apartment complex in the first place because the tax concession wasn't there, they go, we're giving money away, but it's like it's money that we wouldn't otherwise have if the developer didn't come here and build it. So it's kind of like. I don't know. I just seems like, and yes, I believe the solution really is the government sponsoring the building of tens of thousands of units across Sydney and Melbourne and renting them out at cost. But like short of that, if the government's willing to do anything that will help get more units built, I think that's probably to the good. It just seems like anytime the Greens and the Liberals team up on something, I'm just like really skeptical,
This is why the policy is attractive, is because the housing department of any particular relevant state doesn't have to then take on the maintenance and upkeep of 150,000 units, but there's still that supply in the system. But it's the Labor have promised over the last couple of years in various budgets, massive investments in housing. There's the housing fund that they promised, but nothing yet has been, apart from the regular stuff that they're already doing, as far as I'm aware, like there's not been any houses that have been built yet with any of this funding that's been promised. So I feel like in this case, it would be great if the Greens could just stop their maximalist,
we just need to do something.
Shit. Yeah. Just do something.
Do anything.
Anyway. And speaking of Australian politics, still, it's been a lot of furore this week about the Labor caucus and a particular senator, Fatima Payman, crossing the floor. Now, you hear quite often with other parties when politicians cross the floor, it's like, oh, they've crossed the floor. They've voted against their own party, but they're actually allowed to do it. If you're a coalition member, you're allowed to do that. That's fine. You can cross the floor. If you do it too many times,
I'm sure there'll be uncomfortable discussions in the party room. But
but Labor have this policy, and they've had it for a long time, is that they vote as a unified blob. So if you disagree, tough shit. If it's a matter of principle, doesn't matter. In this case here, Fatima Payman wanted to, I believe, support a Greens motion. Is that correct?
Yeah. The Greens made a motion to recognise a Palestinian state. And this isn't like last time where it was kind of like they put forward a motion to throw out the rundown for the day. Let's vote whether or not we stop work and talk about a new thing, and that vote failed. This was more just the motion to recognize a Palestinian state in the Senate rather than the House of Reps.
But I mean, this it's a fairly tokenistic gesture. It's not going to change anything from a world standpoint if Australia recognizes a Palestinian state or not, isn't it?
On
Like
its
it's a symbolic
own,
gesture.
no, but that's the whole thing of like just Australia sanctioning Israel doesn't change anything. 50 countries sanctioning Israel
Sure.
might. So, it's one of the, like, oh, no one else is going to do it, so I won't. I won't
Collective action problem.
recycle my cardboard because what more can one man do? But like if everyone recycles their cardboard, anyway. So like putting forward a motion like that, and the motion was supported by was brought forward by the Greens, was supported by obviously the Greens and also David Pocock. And the Labor and Coalition members in the Senate tried to like amend the motion in different ways, but they tried to do it in different ways and couldn't agree on it. So like none of them agreed on it. But when it came to the actual vote for the motion itself, Senator Payman crossed the floor and voted with the Greens, despite the fact that the rest of the Labor senators didn't. So that was a bit shocking. People were like, oh, we haven't seen a Labor person cross the floor in like 30 years or something, or like, all that sort of stuff.
Meanwhile, Anthony Albanese's trying to like drum up the Assange news cycle, right? Like, so there's that article they're trying to push heavily from the Labor PR people. Meanwhile, all this is happening in the background, and Sky News are grabbing a hold of it. Like, it's like Albanese's lost control of his caucus,
But like the part of it that I've found interesting was then, following that, because of the aforementioned like policy that we talked about, where they're like, no, we all vote as a unified unit. There was a bit of a call for Senator Payman to be like kicked out of the party, or I forget what the actual term, expelled from the party, or things like
expelled from the caucus. So you're not expelled from the party, but you're expelled from the body politic, which enables you to discuss things as a party.
And that essentially happened about 15 minutes before we started recording today. Senator Payman was indefinitely suspended from the Labor Party caucus by Anthony Albanese after they had a discussion at the lodge. And I think it's fucking disgraceful. I know they have their policy and all that sort of stuff, but it's not great. And then there was some piece earlier today, not today, but earlier this week, where of sentiment from Penny Wong, Senator Penny Wong, essentially saying, no, Senator Payman should have voted along the party line like I had to on gay marriage. To which I say, fuck you, Penny Wong. You didn't have to on gay marriage. You could have had some fucking principles. If your principles mattered on gay marriage so much, you could have crossed the floor. You could have walked across. You have feet. You could have done that.
Yeah, she's a Muslim woman.
Royally fucked.
She's a Muslim woman who was born in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Like, I think we'd all be pretty surprised. Like, she has...
Yeah.
Like her background and her principles would lead her to that position. And I think to expect that she would vote otherwise from that is pretty unrealistic, right? Like that's, if someone was like, hey, George, you're going to pass this, fuck Italy motion, I'd be like, oh, probably not.
It's like we all
that
have
is my
to
background.
vote it's the whole thing of like, sure, you've joined a party where you have to vote as a united unit. But does that mean seriously when it's the kill all puppies policy that you'll support the kill all puppies policy?
Essentially,
that's what it means. And,
but as in where you have the option to cross the floor and get kicked out, like that's still a choice. You have free will.
But then, like, do you want to be a politician? That's like, would you like to shoot my own feet off?
Okay,
my political career.
Cool. I'll keep being a politician while all puppies are murdered. Like, I don't think any job's worth that.
I guess my question is like, and this is probably a good point, is that it shows that this policy Labor has is outdated. And the reason why this is in, as far as I'm aware, is because like Bob Hawke, back in the late 70s, in the 80s, had a hard time trying to corral a very unruly caucus.
It makes sense to me that you would have a conscience vote on something like this. Like, I just don't understand why. I get why the Albanese government is being so hard-assed about it, because they don't want this whole spiraling out into a whole like crisis where, as you say, Adam, like the whole right wing grabs a hold of it, like, Albo's lost control of the party, all that sort of stuff. However, it's like I said, it's a pretty symbolic kind of motion that they're passing. You can understand from her background, from her principles, why she would want to vote that way. I really do think in this instance, Labor could just like let it go. It's not going to cost them anything. Like,
I just like give everyone give everyone
everybody
one
gets one
vote a year. Everyone
it's like
gets
Spider-Man. Everyone gets one.
Yeah, I just
don't
couldn't believe that the senators like Louise Pratt and Penny Wong like saying, "Nah, we had to vote like against same-sex
It's a
marriage
choice. There's
for all
always
those
you
years.
always have a choice.
We had to compromise those principles. We had to."
But the thing is like
off.
it's that argument of like, do you want to be in the system working within it in order to improve things from the inside, or do you want to be on the outside, you know, sort of being an activist and trying to push the people on the inside to change things? And I guess Senator Payman needs to make a decision as to where she stands on all of that. But it seems like she's made it. She's standing firm with her principles. If the Labor Party wants to kick her out, well, that's up to them. Not that they can afford to lose more senators and have, you know. So it seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot.
She's a Labor member still. It's just that she can't go into the caucus and have friendly chats with all their colleagues.
Anyway, we do need to finish because we're already way over time and I'm getting text messages from my wife. So last story, Bruce Lehrmann has, in his failed defamation case, has been set to pay $2 million after a court accepts the lump sum nominated by the 10 network. So Bruce Lehrmann, suck eggs. That's basically the thrust of it. That's all I wanted to say. So be paying $400 a week until 21:45. At which point we'll all be long dead. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me down to the pharmacy where I'll be getting vapes, baby formula, some diet pills, some Codral.
Yeah, just pick up some Ozempic for us while you're down there, would you?
Yeah.
Adam, you can get Ozempic just from whatever pop-up ad appears in your email.
No,
like,
please do not.
Go to the pharmacy.
No.
Just click the link, right? Just click the link.
Just click the link. They'll take all your personal information and then they'll
Yeah.
give you some ooze to inject into your stomach.
Public service announcement, do not buy Ozempic on ads on pornography sites.
Yeah. You know what? Do not buy Ozempic unless you need it.
Unless you need it for like diabetes.
Reason. Yeah, unless you actually need it.
Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week. Sucked in, Bruce Lehrmann. Eat shit.
Eat shit.